I'm Elle. And let me tell you, this past Thanksgiving was an experience etched so deeply into my memory that I doubt it will ever fade. It was the year my family concocted an elaborate fabrication, a lie designed to explicitly keep me from attending dinner, while the rest of them gathered around the groaning table, their laughter echoing, their celebratory toasts ringing out, as if I were nothing more than a phantom, an inconvenient oversight in their perfect family tableau. Why such an egregious exclusion, you might ask? The reason, in their eyes, was profoundly simple, yet infuriatingly insulting. I am merely an HVAC technician, an AC tech, a tradesperson, not quite refined enough for their burgeoning social circles. But here's the cruel, ironic twist, the very heart of the matter that twists my stomach even now. I was the silent, unwavering financial backbone, the one diligently paying for my sister, Seraphina's exorbitant college tuition. The same sister who was apparently too mortified, too profoundly ashamed to acknowledge my existence in front of her high society boyfriend and his well-to-do parents. The very same family who, with open palms and beaming smiles, eagerly accepted my hard-earned money, yet couldn't bear the thought of my presence at their meticulously set holiday table. This stark, undeniable hypocrisy, this blatant disrespect, was the catalyst. In that moment of searing humiliation, a fundamental decision crystallized within me, a decision so monumental, so irrevocably resolute, that I knew it would fundamentally alter the trajectory of everything. The buzzing neon sign of my HVAC shop, Elle's Climate Solutions, flickered with a faint, tired hum in the encroaching twilight as I methodically locked up for the night. The crisp, cold Seattle air bit sharply through the worn fabric of my jacket, but despite the external chill, an uncharacteristic warmth bloomed in my chest. Thanksgiving was a mere few days away, and for what felt like the first time in an eternity, I wouldn't have to contend with the relentless deluge of emergency repair calls, or the never-ending stream of urgent work orders. I had meticulously orchestrated everything, scheduled all pending jobs well in advance, prepared generous holiday bonuses for my dedicated crew, and even, with a rare burst of optimism, selected a rather respectable bottle of Pinot Noir to bring to what I anticipated would be a convivial family dinner. As I climbed into the familiar embrace of my old Ford F-150, the distinct ring of my phone sliced through the quiet hum of the engine. My mother's name, Margaret Calloway, lit up the screen, a comforting beacon. I smiled, fully expecting her usual pre-holiday ritual call, the one where she'd endlessly debate the merits of pecan pie versus pumpkin pie, seeking my unwavering approval. But the moment I answered, the peculiar, strained cadence in her voice instantly sent an icy shiver tracing its way down my spine. Elle, honey, I wanted to talk to you about Thanksgiving, she stammered, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Something was undeniably deeply off. Mom always possessed a certain crispness in her tone, an almost clipped efficiency born of years of managing a household and a demanding social calendar. But now she sounded tentative, as if treading on fragile glass, as if she were painstakingly preparing to deliver news she knew, with absolute certainty, I would despise. Sure. What's up? I replied, my hand instinctively shifting the truck into drive, the faint grind of the gears echoing in the sudden tension. There was a pause, an agonizing silence that stretched just long enough to make my stomach clench into a tight, anxious knot. "We think it would be best if you skipped dinner this year." The words landed like a physical blow. My hand spasmed, and I nearly swerved sharply into the adjacent lane, my tires briefly squealing in protest. Wait, what? My grip on the steering wheel tightened, my knuckles turning white with the force. What do you mean, skip dinner? We always do Thanksgiving together. It's tradition. The mom let out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, the kind she reserved for moments when she was about to deliver a carefully rehearsed, utterly preposterous excuse. Well, it's just that this year we're keeping things a little more formal. Serafina's boyfriend, Dorian, is bringing his parents, and well, we thought it might be better if it was just close family. I scoffed, a raw, humorless sound escaping my throat, my chest constricting with a sudden, suffocating tightness. I am close family, Mom. Of course you are, sweetheart, she chirped quickly, her voice cloying, dripping with a saccharine insincerity that made my teeth ache. It's just, you know how these professional families can be. It's important for Serafina to make a good impression, a lasting one. And there it was, the thinly veiled, underlying message, delivered with the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the gut. My job, my blue-collar life, my very existence, was unequivocally not up to their meticulous, self-imposed standards of professionalism. You know what, Mom? Because I don't wear a damn suit and tie, because I don't sit behind a desk pushing papers, I'm not good enough to sit at the table with Dorian's family. Is that it? My voice rose, a sharp, angry tremor bubbling just beneath the surface of my skin. Elle, don't make this about you. Her voice, though still attempting to be placating, held a faint edge of irritation. I let out another short, humorless laugh, the sound grating even to my own ears. Oh, I see. So it's not about me. It's just about making absolutely sure Serafina isn't embarrassed by her lowly, working-class sister. Is that right? Her HVH, repairing, grease-stained sister. She didn't respond. The silence that hung heavy in the truck cab was more than enough confirmation. It was damning. I can't believe this. I muttered, the words barely audible. Elle, honey, it's just one dinner. Mom chirped, her voice attempting to inject a false sense of lightness into the oppressive atmosphere. We'll make it up to you. Maybe a family brunch next weekend. My treat. She offered the suggestion as if a mimosa and a stack of pancakes could somehow erase years of subtle slights and this monumental, deliberate exclusion. I didn't dignify that with a response. I just hung up, the sharp click of the phone echoing the finality of the conversation. I sat there for a long moment, my hands still gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers ached, my breathing shallow and ragged. One single dinner, after years and years of selflessly helping Serafina, of painstakingly paying for every single cent of her tuition, of ensuring she never had to worry about a damn thing, not rent, not books, not living expenses. And now I wasn't deemed good enough, refined enough, or polished enough to even be in the same room as her boyfriend's esteemed family. The hypocrisy was breathtaking in its audacity. As I sat there in the oppressive stillness of my truck, the engine long since turned off, my phone vibrated again. A new text message from my cousin, Genevieve. I need to tell you something, Elle. It's about Thanksgiving. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the message notification, a knot of dread tightening in my gut. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me already knew, but I opened it anyway. I overheard Mom and Serafina talking the other day. Serafina told her she didn't want you there, because she was afraid it would make her look bad in front of Dorian's parents. She said, and I quote, "I don't want them to think we come from a working-class background." I read the message twice, then a third time, the words blurring through a sudden haze of unshed tears. My stomach plummeted, a sickening lurch. My own sister. The same sister whose textbooks, whose tuition, whose rent, whose very existence in law school I had been diligently covering for years, was ashamed of me. Ashamed of the honest, hard work I did with my own two hands. Ashamed of the successful business I had painstakingly built from the ground up, brick by brick, repair by repair. Ashamed of the very life I had forged with sheer grit and determination. A primal urge to smash my phone against the dashboard surged through me, a desperate need to shatter something, anything, to release the incandescent rage and profound hurt that churned inside. But I just sat there, gripping the cold metal of the steering wheel, my knuckles turning bone white, the vibrating phone still clutched in my other hand. Going back, I should have seen the signs. They were there, subtle at first, then increasingly overt. The way she never, ever invited me to her glitzy college events or her law school mixers. The way she would abruptly change the subject, her eyes darting away. Whenever her friends innocently inquired about what I did for a living. The way she never once, not even in passing, introduced me to Dorian, even though they had been, seriously, together for nearly a year. I had rationalized it all away, convinced myself I was merely being paranoid, overly sensitive, reading too much into her busy, ambitious life. But this final undeniable betrayal shattered all my carefully constructed illusions. It was a truth too stark, too painful, to ignore. Thanksgiving Day arrived, cloaked in a chilling dampness that mirrored the emptiness inside me. For the first time in my entire life, I spent the holiday completely alone. I tried desperately to distract myself. I went for a long, aimless drive, the Seattle landscape a blur outside my window. I stopped at a greasy diner for lukewarm coffee and a sad, solitary slice of pumpkin pie. I even called a few friends, forcing a cheerful facade into my voice. But nothing, absolutely nothing, managed to dull the persistent, agonizing ache that throbbed in my chest. It was a physical manifestation of profound rejection. That evening, against every fiber of my better judgment, a morbid curiosity compelled me to check social media. And there they were. A barrage of perfect, smiling family photos. The impeccably set dinner table, laden with glistening turkey and artisanal side dishes. Serafina, radiant in a sleek, elegant dress, beaming with effortless charm next to Dorian, his parents looking equally polished and distinguished. And I was nowhere in sight, a ghost, an inconvenient memory. That was the precise, defining moment something fundamental shifted within me. If Elle Calloway, the person who had quietly and consistently funded her dreams, was not deemed good enough to sit at their pristine Thanksgiving table, then my hard-earned money was certainly not good enough to continue paying for Serafina's tuition. The equation was simple, stark, and utterly clear. A quiet, yet incredibly powerful decision solidified deep within my resolve. A decision that, I knew with absolute certainty, would change every single thing. The very next morning, I woke up with an unfamiliar, almost buoyant sensation. It wasn't exactly relief, not yet, but something far more potent and unshakable clarity. The kind of clear-eyed vision that only descends upon you when you finally, irrevocably cease manufacturing excuses for people who, frankly, don't deserve the air they breathe, let alone your unwavering support. I made my customary strong coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and, with a calm I hadn't felt in years, pulled out my trusty laptop. Gaining access to the university's labyrinthine payment portal had, over the preceding years, become second nature to me. I knew the password to Serafina's student account better than I knew my own streaming service login. My eyes scanned the familiar interface. Due date 2 weeks. Balance a staggering $21,500. I stared at the daunting number, my fingers hovering for a brief, almost imperceptible moment. Over the trackpad, I had meticulously covered every single semester since she had triumphantly embarked upon her law school journey, never once hesitating, never once questioning the financial drain. But this time, my cursor moved with an almost surgical precision, not to initiate a payment, but to deliberately select, remove payment method. A small, innocuous pop-up dialog box materialized on the screen. Its stark white background and simple black text carrying immense weight. Are you sure you want to remove this account as a payer? This action cannot be undone. I clicked yes, without the slightest tremor of hesitation, without a second thought. The click, a tiny, almost inaudible sound that, to me, resonated like a thunderclap. The second my laptop lid snapped shut, a triumphant, almost defiant thud, my phone, resting innocently on the table beside my cooling coffee, began to buzz with insistent urgency. My mother's name, Margot Calloway, flashed across the screen, a luminous, insistent warning. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. By the fourth relentless call, I let out a long, weary sigh, a subtle resignation, and picked up, already bracing myself for the predictable storm. Elle! Mom's voice, when it finally broke through, was sharp, bordering on exasperated, as if she had already been mid-argument before I had even deigned to answer. "What are you doing?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, savoring the bitter warmth. "Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't play games with me," she snapped, her frustration clearly mounting. "Serafina just called, hysterical, absolutely beside herself, saying you cut off her tuition payment. Tell me that's not true." "Oh, it's true," I said, my voice flat, devoid of any discernible emotion. Silence. A sharp, almost painful intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Elle, how could you be so cruel?" "Cruel?" I laughed, a short, humorless, almost choked sound. That's an interesting choice of words, considering she's the one who deliberately got me disinvited from Thanksgiving dinner. Because she was profoundly embarrassed by my existence, by my very presence. She was just trying to make a good impression on Dorian's family, Mom argued, her tone shifting, almost seamlessly, into that saccharine, guilt-tripping mode she always deployed when she desperately wanted something from me. "You know how these things work, Elle. She's young, she doesn't think things through. She's just trying to build a life." "She's 24, Mom," I corrected, my voice unwavering. "She's old enough to know exactly what she's doing. Old enough to be held accountable for it." Another pregnant pause. Then, the inevitable. The argument I had anticipated with wary certainty. "But you promised you'd support her through school, Elle. You gave your word." "No," I corrected, my grip tightening on my coffee mug, the ceramic warm against my palm. "I promised to help my sister. Not someone who treats me like I'm disposable. Not someone who pretends I don't exist when it's inconvenient." "She didn't mean it that way, Elle. You're misinterpreting. She meant it exactly that way." Mom let out a frustrated, sputtering sigh. "You're overreacting, Elle. Family makes sacrifices for each other. That's just what we do. It's how families function." I swallowed back a bitter, acidic laugh, the taste metallic on my tongue. Funny how family only seems to apply when I'm the one doing the giving. Funny how when it's my turn to expect a little basic respect, a sliver of acknowledgement, suddenly I'm asking for too much. Suddenly I'm being dramatic or overreacting. "She needs this, Elle! Her future depends on it!" "So did I retorted, the words hanging heavy in the sudden silence. Mom fell silent. For once, she didn't have an immediate comeback. No rehearsed lines about what was best for the family, or how Serafina's entire future irrevocably depended on my continued financial generosity. I let the silence stretch, savoring the uncharacteristic quiet, before I spoke again, my voice steady, unwavering. "I'm done. Elle." Her voice was laced with a desperate plea. "I mean it," I reiterated, my conviction absolute. "I've spent years paying for her entire education, meticulously covering every single expense, making absolutely sure she never, ever had to worry about a damn thing. And the one time, I needed her to just acknowledge me, to show me a modicum of respect. She chose to erase me instead. She chose to pretend I didn't exist." Mom exhaled, the sound a ragged, exasperated huff. "You're being so dramatic, Elle. I think we're done here," I said, ignoring the sharp, familiar sting in my chest, a phantom echo of old wounds. "Elle, wait." I hung up. The click was loud, definitive, final. For a long, suspended moment, I simply sat there, the phone resting heavily in my hand, my pulse hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had done it. I had actually, irrevocably done it. I should have felt guilty, perhaps. And maybe, a minuscule, deeply buried part of me did, a tiny flicker of remorse. But it was so infinitesimally small, so thoroughly smothered beneath years of festering resentment and unacknowledged pain, that I barely registered its presence. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something dangerously, exhilaratingly close to profound satisfaction, a liberating lightness. I sat in the dim, almost monastic light of my living room, the low, distant hum of the city outside barely penetrating the thick, soundproofed glass windows. The half-empty cup of coffee on the polished wood table had long since gone stone cold, its surface clouded, but I didn't move. My mind was too consumed, too busy, meticulously unraveling years of memories, each one a fragmented piece of a sprawling, painful puzzle I had stubbornly refused to see clearly until this very moment. Serafina had been ashamed of me for a very long time. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. The signs, in hindsight, had always been glaringly, painfully obvious. I remembered last Christmas, when she had thrown a lavish, exclusive party for all her high-achieving law school friends. I had found out about it only through a stray, accidental Instagram post, her dazzling, smiling face front and center, bathed in the glow of festive lights, accompanied by a saccharine caption about celebrating success with the best people. I hadn't been invited. When I had confronted her about it, gently, carefully, she had mumbled some rushed, flimsy excuse about how it was just a small, casual thing, really, nothing big. You wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. And like an idiot, I had let it slide. Then there was the time I had visited her on campus. I had been in the general area for a job, a routine HVAC inspection for a university building, and figured I'd seize the opportunity to stop by. Surprise her, maybe take her out to a nice dinner. When she saw me walking confidently toward her dorm building, her eyes had darted nervously around, like a hunted animal, as if she were absolutely terrified anyone, would see me, would connect her to me. She had barely allowed me inside her cramped, albeit meticulously decorated, dorm room. Rushing through a few minutes of strained, forced small talk before frantically fabricating some urgent excuse about an indispensable study group she absolutely had to get to. And the introductions, God, the utterly humiliating introductions. Whenever I unexpectedly ran into her and her polished, ambitious friends, she never, not once, said, "This is my sister Elle." It was always just a vague, dismissive, "Oh, this is family." As if my actual identity, my name, my profession, was something best left unspoken, something to be kept deliberately vague, to avoid any potentially embarrassing associations. I had diligently, painstakingly told myself it wasn't intentional, that she was just distracted, busy, young, caught up in the whirlwind of her budding career. But it wasn't that. It never was. She had been profoundly embarrassed by me all along. The realization, brutal and undeniable, burned through me, a slow, seething kind of anger that wasn't solely directed at her, but, to my shame, at myself too. For years I had meekly, passively allowed this to happen. I had let her take from me, let her subtly diminish me, let her get away with these blatant slights because I stubbornly clung to the archaic notion that family meant something immutable, something unconditional. But family, I now understood with crystal clarity, shouldn't be conditional. And love, true love, shouldn't come with fine print, with hidden clauses, or with a price tag. I turned back to my laptop, my fingers hovering, for a fraction of a second, over the keyboard. It was almost muscle memory by now. The familiar sequence of logging into the university's payment portal, meticulously checking the upcoming due dates, making absolutely sure everything was squared away, settled. But this time, the screen felt different. The numbers, the familiar interface, seemed to mock me. Next semester's tuition at $21,500, due in 2 weeks. I stared at the colossal number, my stomach twisting into a painful knot. How many late nights had I slogged away at emergency repairs? How many weekends had I sacrificed to ensure that precise amount of money was available? How many much-needed vacations had I begrudgingly skipped? How many times had I consistently, without question, put her needs, her aspirations, her future before my own? And for what, exactly? So she could airily pretend I didn't exist when it became inconvenient for her carefully constructed facade. No, not this time. I grabbed my phone, my resolve hardening, and dialed the university's financial aid office. A polite, remarkably cheerful voice picked up after 2 rings. University Financial Services. How can I assist you today? I need to remove myself as the payer on an account, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the internal turmoil. There was a brief pause, a moment of professional processing. Are you sure, ma'am? This action will directly impact the student's enrollment status. I closed my eyes, took a slow, deep, fortifying breath. I had spent years being sure of things that didn't remotely deserve my certainty, my unwavering commitment. But this, I'm sure. I affirmed, the word solid, unyielding. The process took less than 5 minutes. A few standard verification questions, a final, unceremonious confirmation, and just like that it was done. Irrevocable. Final. I set my phone down, exhaled slowly, bracing myself, waiting for the inevitable wave of guilt to creep in, to wash over me, to drown me in remorse. It didn't. Instead, all I felt was a strange, unfamiliar, yet profoundly liberating kind of relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying someone else's burden. I wasn't constantly managing someone else's fragile future. But I also knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was merely the beginning. And when Serafina found out, truly understood the implications of my actions, she was going to utterly lose her mind. The first call came less than 24 hours later. I was leisurely halfway through my morning coffee, enjoying the rare quiet of a Sunday, when my phone vibrated insistently on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen, already knowing, with a deep, visceral certainty, who it was even before I saw her name. Serafina. I let it ring. It rang again. Then a 4th time. A relentless buzzing demanding my attention. I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening almost imperceptibly around the warm ceramic of my mug. I wasn't ready for this conversation. Actually, no. The more accurate truth was that I simply didn't hear this conversation. The buzzing finally ceased, and a voicemail notification popped up, blinking accusingly. Against my better judgment, a flicker of morbid curiosity, I pressed play. Elle, what the hell? Her voice, shrill with panic and barely suppressed rage, screeched through the tiny phone speaker. I just got an email from the university saying my tuition payment was declined. This has to be a mistake. Call me back, immediately. I set my phone down, taking another slow, deliberate sip of coffee. Too much drama. Too much self-absorption. I stewed in it. Another call, then another, then a barrage of frantic texts. Elle, if you don't fix this, I won't be able to enroll next semester. You can't just do this to me! You pyramisi! I typed out a short, blunt response. Not my problem. But before my thumb hovered over the send button, I stopped. What was the point? She would never ever understand. No text from me, no matter how carefully worded, how patiently explained, was going to make her suddenly see the years of relentless effort, the countless sacrifices, the profound love I had poured into making her life effortlessly easier. She only ever saw what she had lost, not the immense privilege of what she had been so freely, so selflessly given. I deleted the unsent message and, with a sigh of weary resignation, put my phone on silent, because I already knew, with absolute certainty, what was coming next. Serafina wasn't the kind of person who quietly, meekly accepted consequences. When Serafina finally realized I wasn't responding, that her frantic calls and texts were hitting a brick wall of silence, she pivoted to the next best thing, Dorian. She showed up at his pristine apartment, her hair a wild, disheveled mess, her eyes wide and brimming with unshed tears, swimming with a raw, desperate panic. Her breath came in ragged, heaving gasps, as if she had sprinted there in a blind, consuming rage. He had barely managed to crack open the door before she was pushing past him, invading his space, pacing back and forth across his meticulously tidy living room like a caged animal. I can't believe this, she breathed, her hands gripping her temples, pressing against her skull as if to contain the chaos within. "Elle cut me off! Just like that!" No warning, no explanation, no nothing. Dorian frowned, a ripple of confusion marring his usually composed features, as he calmly shut the door behind her. "Wait, Elle. Your sister, Elle." "Yes," she snapped, whirling on him, her eyes blazing. "I just got the email. My tuition payment didn't go through. I tried calling her, but she won't answer me." "She blocked me, I think." Dorian slowly sat down on the plush couch, his confusion evident, growing with each word she uttered. "Hold on. I thought your parents were paying for school." Serafina froze. For the first time in years, perhaps even in her entire life, she didn't have a carefully rehearsed, polished excuse immediately at hand. She had never, ever told him that Elle was the one shouldering the entire financial burden. "Well, I mean, they help," she muttered, suddenly avoiding his gaze, her eyes darting nervously around the room. But Elle was covering most of it. Dorian's brow furrowed deeper, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "Most of it? How much are we talking, Serafina?" She let out a nervous, brittle laugh, a sound devoid of genuine amusement. "Oh, a few payments here and there. Just to help out." Serafina. His voice was sharp now, cutting through her flimsy pretense. "How much?" She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. The lie was unsustainable. "All of it," she whispered, the words barely audible. His expression darkened, morphing from confusion to a cold, steel-edged disappointment. "So let me get this straight. Your sister has been paying for your entire college education this entire time. All these years, and you let me believe your parents were diligently covering it." She waved a dismissive hand, as if brushing off a trivial matter. "It's not a big deal, Dorian. It's family, we help each other." Dorian cut her off, his voice laced with an icy calm that was far more chilling than any shout. "And wasn't Elle not invited to Thanksgiving?" "What was that about, Serafina? That seemed like a rather large deal to me." Serafina's face flushed a deep, mortified crimson. That was different." "How?" he pressed, his gaze unyielding. She opened her mouth, but no coherent words emerged. And that's when Dorian, with a sudden, devastating clarity, pieced all the fragmented clues together. The subtle hints, the evasions, the contradictions. The sister who's been paying for your entire education, the one who's literally bankrolling your future, wasn't good enough to sit at the dinner table with your boyfriend's family. His voice was eerily calm, dangerously so, but there was an unmistakable edge to it, a finality that spoke of a deep, irrevocable disappointment, like he was utterly, completely done. Serafina scrambled, desperate to explain, to salvage, to spin. "You don't get it, Dorian." "It was just about appearances."
"About making a good impression."
"It's not like I don't appreciate what Elle's done, but she just doesn't understand the world I'm trying to be a part of. The world of prestige and opportunity." Dorian let out a slow, heavy breath, shaking his head, a profound wariness etched onto his handsome features. "You mean the world where you lie about where you come from? The world where the people who actually help you, who sacrifice for you, aren't polished enough, aren't sophisticated enough to acknowledge in public?" Her throat tightened, a painful constriction. Wow. It was the only word he uttered, sharp and decisive, before he abruptly stood up, walked to the table, and grabbed his keys. Serafina blinked, her mind reeling. "Wait? Where are you going?" Dorian looked at her, his gaze dispassionate, like he was truly seeing her for the very first time, stripped bare of all her artifice. "I need some space, Serafina. A lot of it." Her stomach dropped, a cold, sickening lurch. "You're seriously mad at me over this? Over a little white lie?" Dorian didn't answer. He simply turned, opened the door, and walked out, closing it softly yet definitively behind him. And for the very first time, Serafina realized, with a horrifying, gut-wrenching clarity, that she might have just lost far, far more than simply her tuition. That night, my phone vibrated with a final, terse text message from her. I hope you're happy. You just ruined my life. I stared at the screen, the glowing words seeming to mock me. I waited, just as I had before, for the familiar tendril of guilt to creep in, to wrap its icy fingers around my heart. It didn't. Not a flicker. I just calmly set my phone down, picked up my now cold coffee, and finished it. Because if she genuinely thought I had ruined her life, she was about to learn, with brutal, undeniable certainty, that she had done that all on her own. My hands were clean. The next call wasn't from Serafina. It was from my mother. I stared at the screen, her name, Margot Calloway, glowing like a warning, a beacon of impending emotional manipulation. I could already, vividly hear the tone she would adopt, the carefully measured disappointment, the soft, aggrieved sighs that carried far more weight than any actual words. The insidious underlying message that I had, somehow, inexplicably, once again failed her. I let it ring twice, a small act of defiance, before answering. Elle! Mom's voice was sharp, urgent, stripped of its usual veneer of gentle concern. I just got off the phone with Serafina. She's hysterical. Absolutely distraught. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, tightening my grip on my coffee mug, feeling the warmth spread through my fingers. Yeah. I drawled, keeping my voice utterly neutral, devoid of any discernible emotion. Maybe she should have thought about that before she treated me like I didn't even exist. Before she threw me out of Thanksgiving dinner. Elle, she scolded, her voice dropping into that familiar, saccharine. I'm trying to be reasonable.
Here, Tone, she's your sister. You can't just abandon her like this.
It's unthinkable. I exhaled slowly through my nose, forcing myself to remain calm, to not rise to her bait. I didn't abandon her, Mom. I just stopped funding her incredibly expensive, entitled lifestyle. She's just a kid, Mom wailed, the exasperation now creeping into her voice. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. Mom, she's 24. She's a grown woman. Legally, academically, emotionally. She doesn't know how to handle this kind of setback, Mom pressed, her voice escalating. If she has to drop out, it'll ruin her entire future, her entire career. All those years of hard work will be for nothing. There it was, the real, unvarnished reason for her call. Not to ask how I was coping after being so cruelly, so deliberately, thrown out of Thanksgiving. Not to offer a single word of apology for the way I'd been treated. No. This was solely about damage control, about meticulously cleaning up the colossal mess Serafina had made of her own life, and I, naturally, was expected to be the one to clean it up. Again, I stayed silent, waiting for her next move, letting the unspoken accusation hang heavy in the air. Elle, please. Mom's voice softened, sensing my resistance, attempting a more gentle approach. You know how hard she's worked to get where she is. All those sleepless nights studying. I swallowed the bitter, metallic taste rising in my throat. And where was she, Mom? When I was working double shifts, pulling overtime, meticulously saving every penny, to make absolutely sure she never had to take out a single student loan. Where was she, Mom, when she let you uninvite me to Thanksgiving, because she was so profoundly embarrassed by me, her own flesh and blood? A mom let out a long, dramatic, exasperated sigh. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, Elle. It was just a misunderstanding. I nearly dropped my mug, my hand trembling slightly. Are you serious, Mom? Are you actually serious?
She erased me.
She's been erasing me for years? She's only calling now. She's only hysterical now. Because she finally lost her safety net, her personal ATM. She's family. Elle. Mom stressed, her voice firm, resolute. We help each other. Always. Funny how that only ever seems to work one way. I muttered, shaking my head, pushing off the counter, and beginning to pace the length of my kitchen. No, Mom. I helped her. I covered her tuition. I made absolutely sure she had a roof over her head, textbooks in her hand, food in her stomach. I effectively gave her a future, and she couldn't even give me a seat at the damn dinner table. That's not helping each other, Mom. That's exploitation. She's scared. Elle, she's young. She's dealing with a lot of pressure. Mom tried, desperately. She's selfish. I corrected, my voice sharp, cutting. And I'm done cleaning up after her messes. There was a long, heavy pause. Then, in a voice coated with forced patience, Mom asked, "So what do you expect her to do? Just drop out? Throw away her dreams?" "Not my problem," I said flatly, unequivocally. "Elle," she warned, her voice rising again, a renewed edge of desperation. "I mean it, Mom," I said, already utterly exhausted by the relentless emotional battlefield. "Find someone else to foot the bill. Find another golden goose." "Like who?" she shot back, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking. "Your father, and I can't afford it, Elle. You know that. We have our own debts." And there it was, the raw, unvarnished truth, finally, mercifully unearthed from beneath layers of guilt, tripping and false concern. She never, not once, expected Serafina to figure it out on her own. She expected me to cave, to buckle under the pressure, to revert to my old, accommodating self. But this time I wouldn't. This time I was steel. "I guess Serafina's going to have to learn how to live like the rest of us," I said, my thumb already reaching for the end call button, my voice crisp and decisive. Elle, click. The next few hours were unnervingly quiet. Too quiet, a tense, suffocating silence. Then, one by one, the rest of them started calling. The entire Calloway clan mobilized. Dad was first. "Elle, this is going too far." His deep voice rumbled over the phone, heavy with manufactured disappointment. "You're punishing your own blood, your own sister." Then Aunt Delilah, her voice dripping with artificial sadness. "I never thought you'd be so heartless, Elle. So cold." Uncle Larry, his tone dismissive, patronizing. "It's just money, Elle. You make plenty. Don't be petty." Cousins, extended family, so-called family friends, even people I barely spoke to, distant acquaintances pulled into their drama, all chiming in with some version of the same refrain. "Elle, how could you? What kind of person does this?" It was almost impressive, really, in a darkly cynical way, how swiftly, how effortlessly they had rallied behind Serafina. How easily they had transformed me, the perpetual giver, the quiet supporter, into the undisputed villain of their self-serving narrative. Not one of them, not a single soul, had defended me when I was so callously shut out of Thanksgiving dinner. Not one of them had bothered to call, to text, to even ask how I was feeling, if I was okay. But the second Serafina, their fragile, precious Serafina, lost her precious tuition payments. Suddenly it was a full-blown family crisis, a catastrophe of epic proportions. I let their messages pile up, a relentless, accusatory stream of notifications, unread, unheard. Then, just before midnight, Mom called again. This time, I picked up. The silence was deafening. "Let me guess," I said, my voice flat, utterly devoid of inflection. "You've gathered the entire family, haven't you, and decided to stage a grand, theatrical intervention." "Elle, this isn't funny." Mom snapped, her voice tight, strained, her usual performance of gentle concern stretched thin, almost to breaking point. "No," I agreed, a bitter, hollow ache in my chest. "It's pathetic." Mom sucked in a sharp, indignant breath. "How dare you speak to me like that? How dare you? How dare I?" I let out a short, bitter laugh, the sound raw and grating. "Where were all of you when I was working weekends, pulling endless overtime, sacrificing my own life, my own dreams, making absolutely sure Serafina had everything she needed? Every single thing." Silence. "Where were you when she pretended I didn't exist? When she diligently hid me from her friends, ashamed of my working-class hands? When she made it explicitly, undeniably clear that my life, my honest work, wasn't good enough for her polished, privileged world?" Mom cleared her throat, a nervous, guttural sound. "Elle, it's not like that. You're exaggerating." "It is like that," I snapped, my voice rising, fueled by years of suppressed rage. "And let me be very, very clear, Mom. I'm done. Serafina is on her own. She will learn what real work is. I hung up, the decisive click echoing the absolute finality of my words. And I meant every single one. But Serafina, of course, wasn't done fighting. She rarely was. At first, it was subtle. A lingering, curious look from a long-time client I'd served faithfully for years. A fractional hesitation in the voices of certain family friends when they spoke to me. A subtle shift in their tone. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was simply imagining it, projecting my own anxieties onto innocent interactions. Then, one afternoon, as I was meticulously finishing up a routine HVAC inspection for Mrs. Carter, a sweet, elderly woman who had been utilizing my services for well over a decade, she turned to me, her usually kind eyes holding a pointed, almost judgmental glint. "I never thought you'd abandon your own sister like that, Elle," she said, her voice carrying that same familiar, self-righteous, judgmental edge I had come to recognize all too well from my family's relentless phone calls. I froze, gripping the clipboard in my hands so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Excuse me, Mrs. Carter." She shook her head slowly, sighing dramatically, as if bearing the weight of the world's deepest sorrows. "Family is supposed to take care of each other, Elle. That's what we believe. I just didn't think you were the kind of person to turn your back on your own blood, especially when she needs you most." There it was, the narrative Serafina had been meticulously spinning. I forced a tight, brittle smile to my lips. "Well, Mrs. Carter, I suppose that depends entirely on which version of the story you've chosen to believe. Or, perhaps, which version you've been told." She pursed her lips, a thin, disapproving line, but wisely didn't say anything else. And I, with a newfound sense of quiet dignity, didn't give her the satisfaction of a full explanation. Instead, I climbed into my trusty truck, pulled out my phone, and opened my social media apps. And there it was. Serafina had clearly been very, very busy. Her posts were vague, yet undeniably pointed, meticulously worded to cast herself as the helpless victim without ever explicitly mentioning my name. Some people value money more than family bonds. So incredibly disappointing. Another one read, "I always believed in truly supporting your siblings, no matter what. Guess not everyone feels the same way about unconditional love." The comments beneath her posts were, predictably, overflowing with manufactured sympathy and outrage. "I can't believe your own family would do this to you, babe. You deserve so much better.
Stay strong, Serafina.
You've always been the sweetest, most generous soul. People like that will regret their choices one day, mark my words." I scrolled through the sea of comments in disbelief, my stomach clenching with a sickening mix of anger and betrayal. My eyes landed on familiar names, distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, so-called family friends, who hadn't so much as sent me a single text after Thanksgiving, now rallying behind Serafina like she was some kind of helpless, angelic martyr. And then, as if on cue, my phone started ringing, a relentless, insistent chime. First my aunt, then my uncle, then inevitably my mother. I silenced every single call, letting them go to voicemail, a small but significant act of defiance. I knew, with a wary certainty, what they were going to say before they even opened their mouths. I had, in a matter of days, gone from being an integral part of the family, the silent, generous provider, to the cold, heartless villain, all because I had finally, irrevocably, refused to keep playing my assigned role as the silent, infinitely giving ATM. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, the heavy thud a satisfying sound, and started the engine. Enough. I was utterly, completely done letting her control the narrative, done letting her manipulate the perception of reality. I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn her I was coming. I simply pulled up to Serafina's impeccably maintained apartment building, walked straight to her front door, and knocked hard, a series of resounding thuds that vibrated through the solid wood. It took a few moments, but then the door swung open, revealing Serafina. She stood there, her phone still clutched in her hand, her eyes widening just a fraction of an inch, before she quickly schooled her expression into something more composed, more carefully practiced. Elle, she said smoothly, her voice a brittle veneer of fake politeness. To what do I owe the distinct pleasure of this unexpected visit? I pushed past her into the apartment, without waiting for a formal invitation, my movements deliberate, unyielding. She scoffed, closing the door behind me with an audible click. Oh, come in, why don't you? Make yourself at home. The sarcasm dripped from her words like poison. I turned to face her, my jaw tight, my resolve unwavering. What the hell do you think you're doing, Serafina? She blinked, feigning utter innocence, her eyes wide and guileless. I have no idea what you're talking about, Elle. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound that grated in the quiet apartment. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up, displaying her latest, most insidious social media post. Oh, you don't? Because this, I gestured to the screen, looks a hell of a lot like you deliberately trying to paint me as some heartless, cruel monster, a villain in your little pity party. Her lips curled into a faint, triumphant smirk. I'm just telling the truth, Elle. My truth. My fingers curled involuntarily around my phone, my grip tightening. The truth? The truth is I meticulously paid your tuition for years, covering every single expense, while you gleefully pretended I didn't even exist. The truth is I gave you everything, Serafina, absolutely everything you needed to succeed, and you still acted like I was beneath you, like I was some inconvenient, embarrassing secret. She crossed her arms over her chest, her smirk widening, a flicker of genuine malice in her eyes. And now you're mad because people are finally seeing who you really are, Elle. The cold, unfeeling Elle who abandons her family. I took a deliberate step closer, lowering my voice, making it a low, dangerous growl. No, Serafina. You should be mad because this little game you're playing, this carefully constructed narrative, it won't end the way you so confidently think it will. Not at all. Her smirk faltered, just slightly, a momentary flicker of uncertainty. Oh, please, she scoffed, dismissing my words with a wave of her hand. You think people are going to turn on me? I've built relationships, Elle. I have powerful connections. Meanwhile you, she paused, her eyes raking over me, dismissing my work with contempt. What? You fix air conditioners. You crawl through ducts. Do you really think that makes you someone? Someone important. My jaw tightened, a muscle throbbing, but I didn't let her words sink in. Not anymore. Not ever again. I simply smiled, a slow, chilling smile that didn't reach my eyes. Go ahead, Serafina. Keep lying. Keep playing your little victim game. Keep manipulating people into thinking you're the innocent one. Keep spinning your web. I turned toward the door, my hand on the handle. Then, just before leaving, I looked back at her, my gaze steady, unwavering, holding hers. Because when this all crashes down on you, and it will, I won't be there to save you. Not this time. Not ever again. And she was about to learn with brutal, undeniable force just how truly, utterly alone she really was. Because her perfect, meticulously constructed little world, built entirely on lies and my sacrifices, was already beginning to crumble, brick by agonizing brick. I didn't have to do anything. Serafina, in her infinite self-absorption, had spent years constructing a precarious life, built entirely on borrowed resources, my money, my endless sacrifices, my convenient silence. But now that I had finally, irrevocably cut her off, the flimsy foundation beneath her was beginning to fracture, to crumble into dust. And the best, most satisfying part of it all, she had absolutely no one to blame but herself. Dorian, with his meticulously ordered life and keen intellect, was the first to realize something was profoundly amiss. It began with a deceptively simple message, anonymous, sent to his inbox late one night. Did you know your girlfriend has been lying about who's paying her tuition? You might want to look into it. At first, he brushed it off. dismissing it as the idle ramblings of internet trolls, bored people with nothing better to do than stir up trouble. But something about the message niggled at him, an uneasy, persistent feeling he simply couldn't shake. Serafina had always been a little too vague about her finances, a little too quick to change the subject. He started digging, discreetly at first. Then, with increasing determination, he contacted the university, pretending to be Serafina, navigating the labyrinthine bureaucracy. It took him 3 persistent tries to finally get through to the correct department, the one that handled tuition payments and financial aid. But when he finally did, the answer was stark, unequivocal, and devastatingly clear. Her tuition had not been paid. Not by her. Not by her parents. There was no record of payment for the upcoming semester, no scheduled transactions, just a long history of consistent payments from a now removed sponsor, Elle Calloway. That night, when Serafina, radiant and oblivious, showed up at his apartment, expecting another evening of expensive wine, carefully curated romance, and intellectual conversation, she was met with something else entirely. Dorian stood at the door, arms crossed over his chest, his phone held loosely in his hand. His expression was unreadable, impassive, but his voice, when he finally spoke, was cold, devoid of any warmth. "Why did I have to hear from someone else that Elle was paying for your education, Serafina? Why did you lie to me?" Serafina blinked, her mind momentarily blank.
What?
"What are you talking about, Dorian?" Dorian stepped aside, allowing her to walk into the apartment, but she already felt the distinct, palpable shift in the air. The easy warmth, the comfortable intimacy that had always existed between them, was gone, replaced by an arctic chill. "I called the university," he continued, shutting the door softly behind her, the click echoing with a sense of finality. "I wanted to see if there was a way I could help with your tuition, since you were so stressed about it. But imagine my surprise when they told me you didn't even have a payment plan set up because your sister was meticulously covering everything, every single penny." Serafina's mouth opened, then closed, no words coming out. She swallowed hard, a dry, painful gulp, and shook her head, a desperate denial. "Dorian, it's not a big deal. It's just a small thing." His voice was sharp now, cutting through her flimsy excuses like a scalpel. "You lied to me, Serafina. You let me believe your parents were paying for school, that you had everything under control, that you were this put-together, independent woman, when all along it was Elle's money, Elle's sacrifices, keeping you afloat, keeping you in your lavish lifestyle." She tried to reach for his hand, her expression melting into something softer, something rehearsed, a look of vulnerability she had perfected over years. "I just didn't want you to think I was some kind of charity case, Dorian. Some burden." Dorian pulled back, recoiling slightly. "Oh, don't give me that, Serafina. You had no problem using Elle as a walking ATM, as your personal financial faucet. And now that she's finally, rightfully stopped funding your life, you're trying to ruin her reputation, spreading malicious lies about her on social media." Serafina stammered, her carefully constructed composure finally crumbling. I just... Dorian let out a humorless, almost pitying laugh. "I can't believe I was so blind to this, so willfully ignorant." He shook his head, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, his gaze distant, disillusioned. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Serafina. You're not the person I thought you were." Her chest tightened, a searing pain. "Dorian, please." He exhaled slowly, then met her eyes, his own filled with a chilling, resolute finality. "I think you should go, Serafina. Now." She stared at him, stunned, the words hanging heavy in the air. "You're breaking up with me. Over this. I can't be with someone who lies this easily, Serafina. About fundamental things. About who they are. About where they come from," he said simply, the words hitting her harder than she could have ever anticipated. For the first time, a profound, Undeniable crack formed within Serafina's carefully constructed facade. She turned slowly toward the door, her heart hammering, waiting, hoping against hope that he would stop her, would call her back. He didn't. The next morning, she woke up to something even worse. She had barely slept, her eyes swollen and red, rimmed from hours of unrestrained crying. Her phone was still clutched tightly in her hands, her desperate fingers scrolling through her contacts, waiting, praying for a message from Dorian that never, ever came. But there was another notification waiting for her, blinking accusingly on the screen. An email. Subject, Fennel Warren G. Tuuntue. But she sat bolt upright in bed, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Dear Ms. Calloway, the email began, its cold, professional tone utterly devoid of sympathy. This is your final notice regarding your outstanding tuition balance. If payment is not received within 48 hours, you will be automatically unenrolled from your courses. Sincerely, University Finance Office. Serafina's stomach plummeted, a sickening, free-falling sensation. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. She scrambled out of bed, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she frantically clicked onto the student portal. The balance was still there, glaring at her, mocking her. No pending payments. No extensions granted. No hope. Her mind raced, a frantic, desperate scramble. A loan. She could apply for a student loan. She thought. A glimmer of desperate hope. She pulled up the application form, her trembling fingers typing in her parents' information, knowing, with a sinking certainty, she'd need them as co-signers. Denied. Bad credit. Too much outstanding debt. She gritted her teeth, a frustrated growl escaping her throat, and tried again, using a different, lesser-known lender. Denied. Her hands clenched into tight, trembling fists. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This wasn't her life, her meticulously planned, perfect life. She picked up her phone, her thumb shaking as she scrolled to Dorian's name. She hesitated, a desperate prayer on her lips, then pressed call. A voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Tears hot and stinging burned in her eyes as she moved to the next contact. Elle. Her finger hovered, trembling, over the dial button, but when she pressed it, the screen immediately flashed a stark, brutal message. User has blocked you. She was utterly, completely out of options. For the very first time in her pampered, privileged life, Serafina realized, truly, viscerally realized, just how irrevocably alone she was. So Serafina, stripped of her safety nets and her carefully constructed lies, did what she always did when faced with an insurmountable problem. She lashed out. I was in the middle of a staff meeting, calmly going over next quarter's projections, when the front door to my office slammed open, with such force it rattled the thick glass partition walls. The lively conversation around me died instantly, cut short by the jarring sound. Every single head in the room, from my seasoned HVAC technicians to my administrative staff, and even a couple of waiting clients, whipped toward the entrance. And there she was. Serafina stood framed in the doorway, a vision of absolute chaos. Her hair was a wild, tangled mess, her eyes red, rimmed and swollen, undoubtedly from hours of crying. Her breath came in ragged, hiving gasps, like she had sprinted here in a blind, consuming rage. The look on her face was pure, unadulterated fury, contorted into an ugly mask of vengeful desperation. "You ruined my life," she shrieked, her voice shrill and piercing, echoing through the suddenly silent office. I set my clipboard down on my desk, deliberately, slowly, exhaling with a quiet resignation. "Here we go." "No," I said, my voice utterly even, calm, a stark contrast to her wild accusations. "I stopped paying for it. You ruined it yourself, Serafina. Your choices, your lies." A profound hush fell over the entire office. Employees paused mid-task, their hands frozen over tools or keyboards. A couple of clients in the waiting area exchanged nervous, wide-eyed glances, but Serafina, in her self-absorbed frenzy, didn't care. She didn't care about the captive audience. about the unprofessional scene she was so vehemently causing. She was here, singularly, to make absolutely sure I suffered. "You abandoned me," she spat, stepping further inside, her eyes blazing.
You left me with nothing. How could you do this to your own sister?
"To your own family?" I crossed my arms over my chest, leaning casually against my desk, affecting an air of detached amusement. "That's funny," I mused, a sardonic smile playing on my lips. "I don't remember you calling me your sister, when you were so diligently lying to your precious boyfriend about where your tuition money actually came from, or when you were having me disinvited to Thanksgiving." Her jaw clenched, a muscle twitching furiously in her cheek.
That's different, Elle. That was just about appearances.
"Is it?" I tilted my head, my gaze unwavering, direct. "Because it seems to me that you only ever acknowledge my existence, only ever use the term sister, when you desperately need something from me, when my money is at stake, when you're in a crisis." Her eyes darted wildly around the room, a desperate, frantic search for an ally, for someone, anyone who would see her side, who would back her up, who would buy into her victimhood. No one did. Their faces remained impassive, their gazes neutral, unswayed. So, with a defeated sigh, she turned to Plan B. Lifting her chin defiantly, she let her voice rise, ensuring every single person in the room could hear her shrill pronouncements.
She abandoned her own family. She left me with nothing. She's selfish. She only cares about herself. She's a monster.
Silence. The weight of her desperate words hung heavy in the air, but there was no reaction, no ripple of sympathy, no surge of outrage on her behalf. Just the quiet, almost palpable disapproval of people who had, in that very moment, seen exactly what kind of person she truly was, stripped bare of all pretense. And then, from the corner of the room, my senior employee, Harry, a man of quiet strength and unwavering loyalty, stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm, yet undeniably firm, cutting through the lingering tension. "You need to leave. Now." Serafina whirled on him, her eyes wide with incredulity and fresh fury. "Excuse me. This is a place of business, ma'am," Harry continued, completely unfazed by her outburst, his gaze steady. "And you are disrupting it. You are disturbing my employer, our clients, and my colleagues." "I'm her sister," she shrieked, pointing an accusing finger at me. Harry barely blinked. "And this is her business. You're trespassing. If you don't leave, I will be forced to call security." Serafina let out a strangled, frustrated sound, a guttural cry of pure, unadulterated rage and helplessness.
You don't understand.
She's leaving me with nothing. She's ruining my future. She's destroying my dreams." Harry didn't flinch. His expression remained utterly impassive. "No, ma'am. She just stopped letting you take advantage of her. There's a difference." That was it. That was the moment the devastating realization finally sank in for Serafina, hitting her with the force of a physical blow. No one here was on her side. Not anymore. She was truly alone. Security arrived within minutes, called in by one of my employees without me even needing to say a single word. They efficiently, calmly escorted her out as she screamed and cursed, her voice echoing down the street, a desperate, fading cry of self-pity and entitlement. And just like that, she was gone. A chapter unequivocally closed. Later that night, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer it, letting it buzz on the nightstand. But a part of me, a small, knowing part, understood this was likely the last time they'd collectively try. The last time they'd bother. The final, desperate plea. I sighed a long, wary sound and picked up. "Elle, we need to talk." Mom's voice was tight, strained. Her usual performance of gentle concern stretched thin, almost to breaking point. I didn't respond, letting the silence hang. Dad cleared his throat, his voice deep, a forced tone of reasonable appeal. "Look, honey, maybe things got a little out of hand, but Serafina is young. She needs help. She's your sister." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone closer to my ear, listening to their carefully coordinated pleas. Let me guess, I said, my voice flat. You think I should help her, don't you? You think I should go back to being her personal bank? Mom exhaled sharply, a frustrated huff. Elle, come on. We're family. Maybe we can work something out. You're doing well after all. Your business is thriving. I laughed, a low, bitter sound that held no amusement. I said, stretching my legs out comfortably on the couch, savoring the feeling of control. So now I'm part of the family again when you need my money. When my success benefits you. Elle, don't be like this, Dad said, his voice stiff, laced with thinly veiled anger. We just think. No. I cut him off, my voice sharp, definitive. Silence. You think I'll cave. You think I'll do what I've always done. You think I'll sacrifice my own peace, my own won serenity, for her comfort, for her convenience. But I won't. I shook my head slowly, even though they couldn't see me. I'm done. Find another ATM. Find someone else to clean up her messes. And with that, I hung up. The phone clicked softly, yet it resonated with the loudest sound of liberation I had ever heard. And for the very first time, I truly, profoundly felt free. But freedom, as I quickly learned, often comes at a cost. The first few days after cutting ties with my family were eerily quiet. A profound, almost unsettling silence. No relentless calls, no manipulative texts, no guilt-tripping voicemails attempting to twist my own emotions against me. Just silence. It was a strange, almost alien feeling, this newfound solitude. After years of being bombarded with their incessant demands, their subtle manipulations, their crushing expectations, I was truly, completely free. And yet, there was still that small, lingering part of me that, out of habit, expected my phone to ring at any moment, for someone, anyone, to swoop in with another desperate plea, another crisis only I could resolve. But no one did. Instead, the days stretched on, peaceful and uninterrupted, unfolding with a tranquil cadence I hadn't known was possible. And for the very first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to simply breathe. Deeply, fully. It was Genevieve, my loyal cousin, who finally broke the profound silence. I was on my lunch break, sitting outside my office building, a steaming coffee in hand, enjoying the crisp autumn air, when her name popped up on my phone. I hesitated for a moment, a fleeting flicker of trepidation, before answering. Hey, I said, leaning back comfortably in my chair, the sunlight warming my face. Hey, she replied, her voice softer, more hesitant than usual. I wanted to check in. See how you're holding up, Elle. I exhaled, letting my eyes drift up to the vast expanse of the winter sky, a pale, hopeful blue. Honestly, Genevieve, better than I expected. There was a pause, a comfortable, understanding silence. Then, I figured. But I also figured you'd want to know what's going on with them. I didn't need to ask who them was. I already knew. Still, I didn't respond right away, mulling over her words. Did I want to know? Did it even matter anymore? My life was moving forward. Genevieve took my silence as permission to continue, her voice gentle. Serafina moved back home. She said, her tone neutral, devoid of judgment. She's taking a break from school. Says she's going to figure things out. But, well, you know how she is. She's struggling. I closed my eyes, unsurprised, a faint sigh escaping my lips. And my parents, I asked, already knowing, with a deep certainty, the painful answer. They're struggling financially. More than they let on. But, of course, they won't admit you were right. She said with a humorless chuckle, a sound of shared exasperation. They're still blaming you for everything, Elle. As if it's your fault that Serafina burned every single bridge she had, utterly destroyed every connection. I nodded to myself, taking a slow sip of my coffee, its warmth grounding me. Sounds about right. They'll never change, Elle, she said after a moment of quiet reflection. I hope you know that. Truly, I do. I murmured, the words resonating with a newfound truth. I think I've always known, deep down. I just wasn't ready to accept it before. I wasn't strong enough. Well, she sighed, a note of quiet pride in her voice. For what it's worth, Elle, I think you did the absolute right thing. The only thing you could do. A small, genuine smile tugged at the corner of my lips, a rare, unbidden expression of contentment. Thanks, Jean. Really? Anytime, Elle, she said, her voice warm, sincere. And hey, Merry Christmas. You deserve a good one this year. A truly peaceful one. The day before Christmas Eve. A crisp, almost celebratory chill in the air. I found myself sitting at my desk, not dwelling on past hurts, but staring intently at detailed expansion plans for my business. Elle's Climate Solutions. It was growing faster, more robustly, than I had ever dared to imagine. More satisfied clients. More dedicated employees. More exciting opportunities blooming on the horizon. For so long, my success had felt like something I had to downplay, something I had to quietly apologize for, something that somehow made me less family-oriented. But not anymore. I wasn't ashamed of the successful, fulfilling life I had meticulously built with my own hands, through my own hard work, my own unwavering dedication. I was investing in myself now, in my future, in my dreams, not in people who saw me as nothing more than a walking, breathing bank account. And that, more than anything, was the most profoundly freeing realization of all. That night, as I was wending down for bed, the soft glow of my bedside lamp casting long shadows, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen, a text from my mother. Merry Christmas. We miss you. Let's talk. Call me. I stared at the message for a long, quiet moment, my fingers hovering, for a fraction of a second, over the screen. A year ago, perhaps even 6 months ago, I would have jumped at the chance, a desperate plea for reconciliation. I would have let guilt, that familiar insidious emotion, guide me. I would have second-guessed myself, endlessly rationalizing, finding excuses. I would have given in as I always had. But not this time. I took a deep breath, held it, then exhaled slowly, a profound sense of calm washing over me. And then, with a decisive movement, I deleted the message. I had nothing left to say to them. Nothing left to explain. Nothing left to give. For the very first time in my life, with absolute, unwavering certainty, I chose myself. And it felt damn good. Felt like coming home. Sex, before we wrap up, let me leave you with something truly important to think about. Life, in its infinite complexity, has a profound way of teaching us some incredibly hard, yet ultimately vital lessons, especially when it comes to the intricate, often tumultuous, dynamics of family. We are, from our earliest days, raised and indoctrinated to believe, with unwavering certainty, that family is everything. That blood is thicker than water. That no matter what unforgivable transgressions occur, no matter how deeply the wounds cut, we should always be there for them, unconditionally. But what happens, I urge you to consider, when that loyalty, that unwavering dedication, becomes profoundly, unequivocally one-sided? What happens when your sacrifices, your endless acts of generosity, your very efforts to hold a family together, are not just expected, but demanded, yet never, ever truly appreciated? What happens when your existence is treated as a commodity, a means to an end, rather than cherished for its inherent worth? Walking away from a toxic family dynamic, from a relationship that drains your very spirit, that diminishes your worth, does not, I repeat, does not mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean you're selfish, heartless, or ungrateful. On the contrary, it means you are finally, courageously choosing yourself. You are choosing your peace, your mental well-being, your self-respect. And that, my friends, is not something to be ashamed of. It is, unequivocally, something to be profoundly proud of. It is an act of profound self-love and preservation. If there's one singular, powerful message I hope you take away from my story, it's this: your intrinsic worth is not, and never should be, measured by what you can do for others. You are not a walking, breathing ATM, to be used and discarded at will. You are not a mere stepping stone for someone else's ambition. You deserve fundamental respect, basic human dignity, even and perhaps especially from the people who share your very blood. You are enough just as you are. Now, I truly want to hear from you. Have you ever had to summon the immense courage to set firm, unyielding boundaries with family members who consistently overstep? Have you ever, for the sake of your own sanity and well-being, walked away from a situation, a relationship, a dynamic that was perpetually draining your life force, leaving you hollow and exhausted? Please share your experiences, your struggles, your triumphs in the comments below. I read every single one, and I genuinely value your perspectives. And if this story resonated deeply with you, if it made you feel seen, truly understood, please drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where in the world you're watching from. If you didn't like it, if it didn't connect, tell me why. I want to hear all your thoughts, the good and the bad. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Trust me, we have plenty more powerful, transformative narratives to tell. Thanks for watching. And remember, choosing yourself is never, ever the wrong choice. See you in the next one.